2:09 a.m. Persian Gulf, 62 nautical miles northwest of Abu Dhabi. 24 Iranian drones just entered the radar coverage of a U.S. Navy surface action group. Not a few. 24. Organized in 4 flight groups of 6, approaching on 4 different bearings simultaneously, altitudes ranging from 80 feet to 1,100 feet, each group at a different speed. The entire formation spread across a 12 nautical mile lateral front. The Surface Action Group, built around the guided missile destroyer USS Fitzgerald as lead ship, with the guided missile destroyers USS Nitze and USS Donald Cook in support, had every Aegis combat system in full active mode within 45 seconds. U.S. Command activated defensive systems immediately. Welcome to Navy Strikeforce. Today, we're going inside the 141 minutes that followed that detection. 141 minutes in which a 24-drone Iranian formation specifically engineered to defeat the standard 3-ship Aegis layered defense. A defensive engagement that expended more interceptor missiles than any single Gulf drone incident in the preceding 3 years. And a post-engagement analysis that identified a drone formation design principle the U.S. Navy had not previously documented, produced findings that were briefed directly to the Secretary of Defense within 2 weeks of the incident. This is what a drone attack designed by engineers who have studied American air defense looks like. Not a swarm of cheap individual weapons hoping one gets through. An engineered system, 4 groups, 4 altitudes, 4 speeds, 4 bearings, calculated to force an Aegis combat system to make impossible choices about resource allocation. To understand why 24 drones in 4 groups is categorically more dangerous than 24 drones in 1 group, you need to understand how the Aegis combat system prioritizes and sequences intercept engagements when it is tracking multiple targets simultaneously. The Aegis SPY-1D phased array radar can track hundreds of targets simultaneously. Its fire control channels, the processing pathways that manage individual weapons engagements, are more limited. In its standard configuration, an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer can manage a defined number of simultaneous engagements using its SM-2 missile battery. The exact number is classified, but the operational reality is that there is a maximum simultaneous engagement capacity, a ceiling on how many weapons can be in flight, being guided towards separate targets at the same time. When the number of simultaneous threats exceeds the simultaneous engagement ceiling, the Aegis system must prioritize, sequencing engagements by threat priority, which is calculated from a combination of closure rate, target size, altitude, and trajectory. In a single group threat, every target is competing for priority within the same threat cluster, and the system's prioritization algorithm can work through them efficiently. In a 4-group threat approaching simultaneously from 4 different bearings, the prioritization problem is geometrically more complex. The system must sequence engagements across groups that are not only competing by individual target priority, but by the timing of when each group will reach the defensive engagement threshold. And those timings may differ by only seconds. The Iranian formation had been designed around this constraint. The 4 groups approached on bearings that placed them approximately 90 degrees apart: northeast, northwest, southeast, and southwest, at staggered distances that would bring them to the Fitzgerald's defensive perimeter threshold within a 3-minute window. Not simultaneously. That would allow simple prioritization by bearing. Staggered, so that the Aegis system was beginning engagements against the first group to arrive, while the second group was crossing the outer threshold, while the third was at medium range, while the fourth was still at long range. A 4-layer simultaneous engagement problem across different range bands. Altitude differentiation compounded the geometry. The first group, northeast, was at 1,100 feet. The second group, northwest, was at 80 feet. The third, southeast, was at 400 feet. The fourth, southwest, was at 700 feet. 4 different altitudes, 4 different engagement geometries for the SM, 2 interceptors, which perform differently against targets at 80 feet versus 1,100 feet, and require different guidance profiles that the fire control system must calculate individually for each target based on its specific altitude track. And 4 different speeds: 95 knots, 135 knots, 110 knots, and 80 knots, respectively, varying the closure timing and the guidance solution duration for each group in ways that further complicated the prioritization sequencing. The Fitzgerald's Combat Direction Center officer had the full contact picture classified and the engagement solution in development at 2:09 a.m. and 45 seconds. She immediately allocated SM-2 engagements against the 2 closest groups, Northeast and Northwest, and activated full electronic countermeasures to attempt jamming of the other 2 groups' guidance systems, while the SM-2 engagements against the primary threats were executed. The jamming results at 2:11 a.m. were mixed. 3 drones in the southwestern group showed behavioral disruption, course deviations, speed reductions, consistent with data link jamming effectiveness. The other 3 in the group were not affected, suggesting a guidance architecture mix within the group. Some drones on jammable data link guidance, some on unjammable inertial navigation. The southeastern group at 400 feet showed no jamming effect at all. All 6 drones maintained their approach, bearing, and speed. Jamming had effectively reduced the southwestern threat from 6 to 3. It had not affected the southeastern threat at all. The northeast and northwest groups were already being engaged by SM-2s in flight. At 2:12 a.m., the NHTSA, positioned 1.4 nautical miles east of the Fitzgerald, activated its own Aegis combat system to full engagement mode and began addressing the northeastern group independently, freeing the Fitzgerald's fire control capacity to refocus on the southeastern group whose jamming immunity had made it the most dangerous unaddressed threat. The Donald Cook, positioned 1.6 nautical miles west, began SM-2 engagements against the northwestern group from her coverage sector. 3 Aegis systems, coordinated, each addressing a different element of the formation. This was the standard 3-ship, Aegis coordinated defense that the formation geometry had been designed to defeat. And for the next 4 minutes, from 2:12 a.m. to 2:16 a.m., the formation's design was being tested against the response it had anticipated. At 2:13 a.m., the first SM-2 intercepts began producing results. 5 drones from the northeastern group destroyed, 1 surviving. 4 drones from the northwestern group destroyed, 2 surviving. The southeastern group, fully inertially guided and jamming resistant, was at 6.2 nautical miles from the Fitzgerald and closing at 110 knots with all 6 contacts intact. 6 drones, 6 nautical miles, at 110 knots, approximately 3 minutes and 15 seconds to the phalanx engagement zone. The surviving drones from the northeast and northwest groups, 3 total, were at closer range, between 2.8 and 3.4 nautical miles. But their numbers had been reduced to a level that the phalanx and ram systems could manage at close range. The southwestern group, reduced to 3 by jamming effectiveness, was at 8.7 nautical miles, the furthest of the 4 groups. The critical engagement window was the southeastern group. 6 intact drones, inertially guided, closing at 110 knots, 3 minutes from the phalanx zone. The Fitzgerald had SM-2 fire control capacity available. The northeastern engagements were completing. But transitioning that capacity to the southeastern group required a 28-second reconfiguration of the fire control solutions, because the southeastern group's approach, bearing, placed it in a sector where the SM-2 engagement geometry was less favorable due to the Fitzgerald's current heading. 28 seconds, 110 knots, approximately 800 additional meters of closure. The commanding officer ordered a 15-degree course change to port at 2:14 a.m., a minor adjustment that brought the southeastern group into a more favorable SM-2 engagement sector and reduced the reconfiguration time to 12 seconds. The 15-degree course change was the correct call. It was also the decision the formation's designers had been counting on the U.S. ship to make. The southwestern group, the 3 jamming surviving drones at 8.7 nautical miles, was on a bearing that, from the Fitzgerald's original heading, had been a less favorable SM-2 engagement sector. From the 15-degree port course change, the southwestern group's bearing moved into the Fitzgerald's most favorable engagement sector, but the Fitzgerald's fire control attention was on the southeastern group's 6 intact drones. The southwestern group's improved intercept geometry was not being actively exploited because there were no fire control resources available to exploit it. All SM-2 capacity was being reallocated to the southeastern threat. The 3 southwestern surviving drones continued their approach, now in favorable engagement geometry, unchallenged except by the Donald Cook, whose own engagement resources were occupied with the northwestern group's 2 surviving drones. The 15-degree course change had simultaneously improved the most urgent engagement geometry and created a coverage gap on the secondary threat, exactly as the formation's bearing architecture had been designed to produce. This is the decision-forcing geometry that makes the 24 Drone 4 bearing formation specifically engineered against the Aegis coordinated defense. The defending ships are not being asked to do something impossible. They are being asked to do something correct, the tactically correct choice in the most urgent engagement. And the formation is designed so that the correct choice in the most urgent engagement creates the coverage gap in the secondary engagement. At 2:16 a.m., SM-2 engagements destroyed 4 of the 6 southeastern drones. 2 survived and entered the close-in defense zone. 2.8 nautical miles and closing. Phalanx, CIWS, and RAM engaged, both destroyed at 2:17 a.m. at ranges of 420 meters and 610 meters respectively. The 3 surviving northeastern and northwestern drones were engaged by Phalanx systems. 1 from the Fitzgerald's starboard mount, 1 from the Nitsa, 1 from the Donald Cook, and destroyed between 2:17 a.m. and 2:18 a.m. Now, the southwestern 3. These drones, which had been advancing unchallenged through the coverage gap created by the Fitzgerald's course change, were at 4.1 nautical miles when the close-in engagements against the other groups completed at 2:18 a.m. 4 nautical miles, all 3 intact. No SM-2s currently in flight against them. The Fitzgerald immediately committed 4 SM-2 missiles to the southwestern group at 2:18 a.m. 3 kills at 2:19 a.m. 1 surviving southwestern drone entered the close-in zone and was destroyed by Phalanx at 2.2 nautical miles at 2:20 a.m. Total engagement duration, 11 minutes. All 24 drones destroyed. 0 hits on any ship in the formation. SM-2 expenditure, 31 missiles across the 3 ships. 0 hits, but 31 SM-2 missiles, and a course change. And a coverage gap that 3 drones had advanced through unopposed for 4 minutes. Now, consider what had actually happened from the formation designer's perspective. The southeastern group's inertial guidance immunity to jamming had forced the Fitzgerald to commit fire control resources to address 6 intact drones rather than relying on electronic warfare to handle them. The course change that had been necessary to put the southeastern group in a favorable engagement sector had simultaneously moved the southwestern group into favorable geometry and out of the active engagement queue. 3 drones had advanced to 4.1 nautical miles unchallenged. 4.1 nautical miles is within engagement range of Iranian weapons that the drones might have been carrying. If any of the 3 drones had been carrying a warhead rather than operating as pure approach probes, the design principle was immediately clear to the analysts reviewing the engagement. The southwestern group was not the formation's primary attack element. It was its penetration probe, the element that the formation's geometry was designed to advance as close as possible by occupying U.S. defensive resources with higher priority threats. If any element in the formation was going to carry a warhead in an actual attack operation, it was the southwestern group, the one the formation geometry kept advancing, unopposed, while the other 3 groups absorbed the defensive engagement. 24 drones, 21 decoys, 3 actual threat carriers. The finding was briefed to the Secretary of Defense at 2 p.m. on the 14th day after the incident. The briefing characterized the engagement as a technology demonstration. Iran had fielded a drone formation geometry specifically designed to advance a selected penetration element to close range by engineering the defensive engagement sequence of the Aegis coordinated defense system. The fact that no drones appeared to be carrying warheads was assessed as consistent with a demonstration objective rather than an attack objective. The mission was to prove the concept and collect the engagement data, not to sink a ship. The engagement data Iran had collected was comprehensive. 31 SM, 2 missiles expended. The specific course change the Fitzgerald had executed, the fire control transition timing between threat groups, the phalanx engagement ranges against the various groups, and the 4-minute window during which the southwestern group had advanced without engagement. 31 missiles, 1 course change, 1 4-minute window. That data, applied to a future formation that loaded warheads on the southwestern penetration element, was the next design iteration. The Naval Air Warfare Center and the Naval Surface Warfare Center were both immediately tasked with developing defensive doctrinal updates. Changes to Aegis coordinated engagement protocols that would prevent the specific course change coverage gap the formation had exploited. The development timelines were classified. What was not classified was the underlying reality. The drone formation that had appeared on the Fitzgerald's radar at 2:09 a.m. had been designed by people who understood Aegis system behavior well enough to engineer its decision sequence. The 31 missiles and the 4-minute coverage gap were not accidents. They were the design. 0 ships hit, 31 missiles expended, 1 gap that held the penetration probes for 4 minutes. The formation had worked exactly as its engineers intended. Stay sharp, stay informed. This is Navy Strikeforce. We'll see you in the next one.